Welcome. This presentation is going to go into the basics of the US university system. This is a really great presentation for parents who are international and didn't go to college in the US. If you're a parent who's just trying to learn about colleges, this isn't quite the best presentation for you because this presentation is assuming that parents are going into this process with a set of jargon and vocabulary that's slightly different from what we use in the US. So it would just add a bit more confusion. These are the topics we're going to be talking about today on our agenda. So we're going to go through an intro and talk about some degrees. We're going to talk about college majors, admissions, and college lists. So if you're someone who has a question that's like, how do I tell the quality of a US education? Or how do majors at colleges work? This is a good presentation for you. If you're someone who you want to know about the categories of colleges in the US, like that specific, we're not going to be touching on that today. So a better presentation would actually be for something like the junior parent night presentation, where we do talk about different categories of colleges. That's a bit more advanced than what we're covering in this presentation, or it's just a different set of topics.
Let's move on to talk about the basics of universities and colleges in the US. When we refer to institutions of higher learning after high school, we will often use the terms university and college interchangeably. While yes, there is a difference between the two, a university will contain many colleges within it. We do not really treat them differently for our high school students who are moving on to the next step in their education. Where you do have a difference is going to be when an institution has a label community college or junior college. That is a different type of post-secondary institution than a university or just a four-year college. And this is the reason why. Universities and colleges award bachelor's degrees. A community college will often be awarding degrees such as associate's degrees or certificates. A certificate is a degree in career technical education, or CTE, that focuses on a very specific skill set. So if a student wants to go on to aviation, dental hygiene, become a firefighter, they would get a CTE degree and they could earn one from our local community colleges. So that's where the difference exists with the label community or junior college. When it comes to colleges that have the label liberal arts college, that doesn't mean that a student would be studying fine arts at a college. It means that it would be an interdisciplinary education, meaning the education at that college will heavily use analytical, interdisciplinary thinking, analysis, reading and writing, and research for those institutions. So a student can go on to a liberal arts college and study STEM or business. They can study a variety of topics at those institutions. A bachelor's degree often takes students about 4 years to earn, give or take. It depends on the institution and how it's set up as to how quickly some students can get in and out, but you'll see some graduation statistics often quoting 6 years as opposed to 4. A bachelor's degree consists of general education classes and a major. So general education classes are going to be classes in all different categories ranging from humanities to STEM, so a student is well-rounded when they've earned a bachelor's degree. A major is going to be the focus of a student's academic study. So this is where things get a little bit confusing between different countries. In the UK, they will often use the term course or program of study. They're basically referring to a major, right? A course is more like a Bachelor of Science in physics. It's all of the pieces. It's referring to the bachelor's degree and the major, but often we'll talk about a major slightly separately than we do talk about bachelor's degrees. And then in France, I believe they call them a license, but we're essentially talking about major. When it comes to undergraduate versus graduate, that's another piece of jargon that we often throw around in the US. Undergraduate education refers to any education that's after high school but before graduate school. So Students, that's often going to refer to just the associate's degree, right, or the bachelor's degree, or a certificate, right? For graduate school, often that's going to require a separate application process for students. So to go on to become a doctor, a lawyer, a professor, they would have to apply to another school in order to earn their master's or their MD or their PhD. Those are often separate programs, although some of them are combined.
When it comes to how college or university and that experience is structured, right, we're typically referring to a course of study that's taking about 4 years. So it matches high school in the US, right? The years are going to be the same. When a student is in their third year, they're a junior, etc. Um, and how colleges or universities can structure what students study often looks like this. So, often during a student's freshman year, they're going to be taking mostly those general education courses. And right, they're slowly going to taper off. So, hopefully, they don't have too many more to do by the time they're a senior. But most students are really using their freshman and sophomore year to get through their general education courses. Um, and what you want to do in order to be sure that you're studying a major that is something that you're really interested in and is something that will lead to a profession and career that you really enjoy is you're going to use your general education courses to help you explore the college major to make sure that's what you want to study. So if you're someone who thinks you want to study maybe marketing, and or let's say applied math, you would take as one of your like math general education courses your applied math course in particular if it was at the right level for you, and then you would also take as a general education course, in let's say social science, one of the psychologies to marketing courses, right? In order to get the flavor of the potential major that you could have. And you're going to really utilize that system for your freshman and sophomore year in order to use general education to explore your major. You don't have to spend more than 4 years at college or at university. And then your junior and senior year, you can focus on your major and you're doing classes that you really enjoy and you don't have too many general education courses to do. Now, something that a lot of parents will ask is how can I tell the quality of a college or university, um, in the US system, right? A lot of the markers that you might have had in other countries aren't quite here in the US. So let's start with the basics. There are public and private colleges. If a college is public, it's accredited by the state, so that is helpful to know. But there are many different focuses of public colleges, but you can at least know that their accreditation has kind of secured, that they have a good quality education. With private colleges or universities, you do want to make sure that you're aware if a college is a nonprofit as opposed to a for-profit college, as you can kind of tell by those labels. A for-profit college is going to be focused on the revenue stream of their school a bit more than I would often prefer for most of these institutions. So if your student is in a for-profit college, that's definitely something that they should ask their college counselor about. You can use data, you can use statistics to also try to understand and gauge the quality of a college. So there's something called a retention rate. A retention rate is the percentage of students who return after their freshman year to the same college to continue on for their sophomore year. So how well are they supporting their students through their freshman year? There's an actual percentage for that. Their graduation rate, how many students start there and then finish there. Make sure that whenever you're looking at a graduation rate that you're also looking at the size of the student body as well. It can help kind of inform more of that percentage because, right, very large schools might not have as high of a percentage rate. ROI, believe it or not, some colleges do share their return on investment for their students based on data provided by alumni about their salaries. So that can kind of be nice. And whenever you get a statistic like ROI or job placement rates, like make sure that you kind of find out the full picture, right, of job placement rates in particular, because students can be underemployed and that could be included in that statistic. So you just want to check, as well as admissions rates to medical school and law school can also be kind of illuminating. It can give more of a picture of how their graduates are being prepared to go on to those professional pathways. Place to find some of these statistics is called College Scorecard. I'll hyperlink this presentation on the website so you can find it as well. And College Scorecard has this retention rates, graduation rates, STEM data about how much it costs. The ROI and admissions rates to medical school and law school is going to be something that would be found on the college's website. And LinkedIn can be a great resource to learn about universities or colleges that you've never heard of. So every college or university will have a page on LinkedIn where you can learn about their alums. You can see what sector of the economy they work in. You can see the companies they work for. Then you can go through and start checking out some of the positions that they have. And it can really provide a lot of information that can be helpful to know about the professional pathways of a lot of these alums from these schools. It might even be a helpful exercise to think of your own workplace and kind of think of where some of your colleagues might have gone to college to reflect the diversity of how many different types of colleges contribute to different workplaces. So it's not just one school where everyone is from. Another really helpful resource are college guidebooks. The FIS guide is my favorite. I have students borrow it after their junior meeting if they can. It's a really good resource on high quality colleges all throughout the US. It has some UK schools in there and Canadian schools as well. Princeton has another equivalent. So if you'll notice on this list, when it comes to trying to decipher quality of education, I have not included brand name. I have not included US World News Report rankings as something to use because there's a much more holistic picture, I think, that needs to happen when it comes to the type of experience that's going to make your student successful and happy for 4 years after high school. In the US, we view education really as an experiential good that's more than just going to class and having very high quality professors. It's also about like becoming a person and really becoming independent. So there's a lot of different resources that certain colleges have acquired. You can sometimes think of colleges as in two camps. There are colleges that are really, you know, they they have the brand name and they get to attract students to them because they know that they are very desired to get into. And then there are the colleges that are really curating unique experiences and really catering to their students and supporting them. So in exchange, right, you don't get as much brand name, which some students really care about. But for these brand name schools, right, there are certain things that they might not be focusing on as much as they should or updating. So keep that in mind when it comes to looking at colleges. And then my problem with US World News Report is a problem that many college counselors have, which is that it's kind of created the system has created a bit of a feedback loop for that colleges were always at the top of the rankings to stay at the top of the rankings. Also, their methodology isn't super clear and transparent, so they will measure the quality of an education, like Student well-being. One of the metrics that will go into student well-being will be how much money a university is spending every year on new facilities. Now, to me, a new stadium for students is a pretty indirect way of improving student well-being. So it might be tempting to use rankings in order to gauge quality, but it is not as accurate as I would like it to be. And that's why I would recommend resources like this and continuing to engage in the College and Career Center at Mountain View and Los Altos. Let's continue on to the basics about college majors. So, right, the focus of a student's undergraduate study, about 12 or so courses when they're in their undergraduate career. When it comes to picking a major in the US, there isn't a ton of opportunity for students in high school to explore the majors that are available to them at colleges. This is within both humanities topics and STEM topics. Colleges have far more majors than we have classes. At any high school in the US. You can get very specific, from software engineering to material science engineering, or um, urban studies, right? There can be a lot of different majors. So it can take some time for students to understand what they want to major in. And that's why our degrees in the US are a year longer often than in many other countries, right? It's 4 years instead of 3, is because we do expect students to kind of need a little bit of time for them to explore in some ways. Um, when we're advising students to reflect on major, we're often advising them to reflect on what they're good at in high school, because the area that they have strengths in will often translate to that area in college. So a student who's really good at history, I'm going to be guiding them to look at different topics in the humanities or social sciences. Or a student who really loves chemistry, I'm going to advise them to look at different areas in STEM and talk to them about what are some of the labs or projects that they've enjoyed in those classes, to think about other aspects of a college that they might be looking for. So that's why we're aware of the label of a college major, but it is not closely tied to career. To go on to become a lawyer in the US, to become a doctor, to become a professor at a college, to go into upper levels of business, you need to go on to graduate school. And to go to graduate school in those specific topics is not tied to major in the US. So that is where this openness is coming from. Speaking of that, advising tracks versus a major. So if a student does want to go on to medical school, often what a student will do when they're at college is they'll be part of a pre-med advising program as opposed to a pre-med major. There are some colleges that have a pre-med major, but because medical school admissions, even veterinary school admissions, is so competitive, there are different theories of thought about how to stand out in those admissions processes. When I was in college back in the day, it was actually advised for students to be like an English major or an art history major because it helped them stand out in the admissions process for medical school. So when it comes to helping your students who are looking at maybe becoming a lawyer, becoming a doctor, they're really looking for pre-law, pre-med, pre-vet, pre-health advising programs as opposed to particular majors. So just be aware of that. A major versus a minor at college. A major, right, is about 12 courses, a minor maybe about 6. When it comes to how that would influence them being hired versus not hired, or whether or not a minor is important to be thinking of, often what happens with a minor is that you have some interest in another topic and you've taken a few courses on it. So you just need, like, you've taken 4 courses on it and you just need 2 more courses to finish that minor. Often a minor doesn't influence an employer more with subject area content. It kind of indicates like an interest that a student has had. When it comes to um, double majoring can happen, right? You saw those 4 years. So if a student is planning out nicely, they can fit in more courses. I see double majoring usually happening less because more colleges have majors that combine the interests of students, like a public health major combines some government policy with health sciences. So that's ideal. I think it's preferable, though, instead of a student double majoring, to have more internship experiences in college. That's my preference for students, because it gets them that professional experience that so many of our college students really need. Um, but double majoring can can happen. Major and admissions. So I mentioned this once. At certain colleges, the major that you want to be at college can tie into how the admissions process works for your student. So some universities admit students based on major, or they'll call it a direct admit major, will be the label that they will use. Most commonly, colleges or universities that do this are public universities. This happens because so many people are interested in a particular major that they have to limit the number of people who can participate, because if they do not, not everyone can get the courses that they need in order to graduate with that major. At some colleges, they will admit you into a particular college within that university. So this often happens at some of our University of California college campuses, or UCs. So at like UC Berkeley, their College of Letters and Sciences, like you are admitted into that college, and like maybe some of those majors are like a bit more selective, but like you can pretty much change your major within the College of Letters and Sciences somewhat easily, as long as it's not one of the more highly selective ones. It's kind of a good example. Or like UC Santa Barbara, if you're admitted into their College of Letters and Sciences, it's easy to change your major there. That's a better example. What colleges will sometimes do, if they do have what's called impaction, where there's such a great number of students that they have to raise the admission standards for that major, what they will sometimes do, instead of having a direct admissions pathway where you apply to be a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering, instead of just admitting you into that pathway and you knowing all 4 years that you are going to graduate with a Bachelor's in Mechanical Engineering, some colleges will do something called a pre-major. So in nursing, this frequently happens within our California State University system. Well, you'll apply to be a nursing major. But what happens is you're admitted as a pre-nursing student until, let's say, like Sonoma State, and then you have to apply your sophomore year in order to become a nursing major, and you may or may not get it admitted into your nursing major. This is a system that they're using at University of Washington when it comes to engineering as well. So it takes away the heightened level of selectivity when a student is applying from their senior year into their college, but it adds a layer of competition when a student is a sophomore already at a college and potentially won't be admitted to the major that they desire. So direct admit majors come with pluses and minuses, and that it can make it much more competitive to go into particular majors. So right now, a very trendy major is computer science, or many engineering disciplines, or nursing. Any nursing degree is very competitive to get into, which means that if you might look at the admission statistics for, let's say, San Diego State University, you might predict, like, oh, based on their admissions rate and my GPA and the average GPA from my high school, I would get admitted into into San Diego State. But because so many people are that much more competitive for their nursing major or for their computer science major, it makes it that much more competitive and you might not get in. So it influences how a student would create their college list, essentially. All right, let's move on to talk a bit more about admissions. In the US, admissions isn't tied to a particular test or test score or a particular class or course or prerequisite course and getting a grade like an A minus or a B plus. That isn't part of our admissions system here, which in exchange can lead to what feels like a great lack of transparency. To give you an idea, though, the factors that colleges do consider, you can take a look at that list. And what I can say is that the most important factor to many, many colleges in the US is going to be a student's transcript, the level of rigor of their courses in comparison to what's available to them at high school. Does our high school have a cap on how many AP or honors courses we can have? Then they know a student can't take over that number of courses at our high school. What was the trend in their grades? What was their GPA, weighted and unweighted, right? They can look at many different types of GPA for just one admissions offices. When it comes to testing the SAT versus ACT, right? Different colleges and universities are weighing that differently now. And those other factors, extracurriculars, letters of recommendation, essays, some colleges do want to know those things and some of them don't, right? Our California State University system does not really use any of those in their application. Those supplemental elements like a portfolio or auditions, those two in particular are often for students who are into the visual or performing arts or architecture, sometimes even engineering, I believe, can have a portfolio nowadays, though, so it can vary. And interviews are often part of a private school admissions process sometimes, and they're usually optional. So admissions can vary widely, and it's not meant to create confusion. It's trying to account for the adversity in students' different high school experiences, because where they started out in middle school might not set them up to get to like the right level of math that some of their peers have. So colleges are trying to account for that by being open-minded in their admissions process. So they often don't have clear answers for you if you want to know what level of math should my student take or how many AP courses should my student take. They are often not going to answer that, not because they want to create confusion, but because they want to be open-minded and admitting all different types of students to their university. When it comes to helping your student create a college list, I hope that things can be a little bit easier in this regard. It's going to take a bit more research, but this is the whole kind of goal of this session today, is to kind of understand how can you support your student in creating a college list? What are some of the things that you should be aware of as a parent when they're going into this process? Prior to junior year, when it comes to exploring colleges, Something that's really helpful is just exploring higher education opportunities in a lighter way, getting them to understand the jargon that I just went through: bachelor's degrees, undergraduate, a major, double majoring, general education courses, getting them to understand the structure of the experience. Getting them to understand how the experience at a small college versus a large college could compare. Lighter ways of exploring in that way will help ease some of the pressure and just create knowledge, is what we're looking for. Help your student reflect on how their experience in high school informs the things that they're going to need for their future. So I have quite a few students who are not super strong at math or really do not enjoy math, but do want to go into business or engineering. So helping them reflect in that way on, like, does that main subject that will be part of your major, are you sure that's something that you want to study more, and kind of digging into why they're attracted to particular majors or colleges beyond like how pretty the campus is or how nice the weather is, right? Helping them dig a bit more. Help your student de-stress about the process. It can get really stressful. A lot of students talk about this process too much at Mountain View and Los Altos, in my opinion. So picking a day of the week, like Sunday dinner or Monday dinner, where that's going to be the only time that you talk about college, can really control the information and won't make it a constant focus. And for yourself, I think it would be helpful as well. In the media, right, you see the same names and headlines all of the time, and just choosing when to plug into it and unplug from it can be really helpful, to create less stress for you and your student. Also, budget. Helping your student understand the cost of college, understanding financial aid when it comes to need-based aid versus merit-based aid, can be really illuminating, right? It can be really difficult to understand how much you and your family would be paying for college, but there are tools that we have. There's something called an EFC calculator, an expected family contribution calculator, that will help you calculate need-based aid. When it comes to merit-based aid, we can tell you some trends in colleges when it comes to merit-based aid. There are spreadsheets. There are ways to predict which colleges will give more need and or more merit-based aid. So helping your student understand that so they can have a budget, or we can create a tuition conscious college list, is really important. And with that, that brings us to the end of my presentation today. Thank you so much for learning about the basics of the U.S. university system.